I've had my round table dialogue with three professionals. The title was 100 Days. We've piggybacked on our new President Joe Biden's initiative, 100 Days of Mask Wearing. So the round table dialogue was called 100 Days Coping with COVID because that's what we're pushing and that's what we're doing. So we had three wonderful professionals to share. One was Dr. Marietta Castellanos, which she was on yesterday. Another was Dr. Roger Harris. And the third was Regine Holly, who is a public health professional telling us about COVID. Let me talk about Dr. Harris, Dr. Roger Harris. He's a conduit between K through 12 and corporate America because there's something that is needed in there that we lose between the public school systems and the universities, and there's a disconnect between them and corporate America. So that is what he is doing today. He has been a teacher, K through 12, a principal, and a superintendent. So I was so pleased to have him. One of the things when asking him questions about remote learning versus learning at school, he says the socialization process is very, very important. And the children are missing that. And that's whether it's kindergarten all the way up through college level. They need the socialization. But one of the things that the stats have not found is that if the children are kept at home, then the COVID levels are not spiking as high if the children are kept at home. So that is not something that they're learning that that's the answer necessarily. As far as the education, the other disadvantages, he said there's such a disparity with the technology from community, from school to school. He says if the children have all the technology that is needed, it's not quite so bad. He said, but the disparity, that gap is so big that that's one of the reasons that the children are losing at home. But something else that we talked about besides the socialization, I'm looking at his tips because I asked all three guests to give an ending tip for parents. But he said something else with the homes is that you absolutely must make the best decision for your own household because there's so many things that parents are having to deal with today. Not just the children learning remotely, their own jobs, have enough money to pay their bills. He says there's just a plethora of decisions parents are having to make. So his strongest suggestion is you make that decision that is best for your household. And what schools, remember he was a superintendent and he has traveled all over the world assisting school systems, not just in this country, but all over the world. He said what's important is that the schools give options for the parents and for the teachers because every school is different, every classroom is different, every teacher is different, and it depends on the level too. And so there must be options provided by the superintendent and by the principals for the schools to make the decisions. And some of that is going to be according to, do they have the equipment, the technology is needed? And that's at home for the children, but do the teachers have what's needed also? When I asked him about a tip, he went in another direction. First, he wanted to talk about cabin fever. He said the cabin fever is very important for the children and the parents and teachers too. He said, because when you stay at home for too many days back to back to back, and you're not getting outside and doing that socialization, he said the cabin fever sets in. He said there's so many disadvantages, and even here, I don't think we've talked about it in this platform, but one of the things we know that divorce is going up, domestic violence is going up. But one of the things that he said was, you become either a hunk, a chunk, or a drunk. He says, staying at home so long, so many people are beginning to drink more. That's the drunk. So many people becoming chunks. They're becoming couch potatoes. Or, in my case, I'm in my office sitting at my desk far too much. So you become a chunk from gaining weight, or they become a hunk from exercising constantly because they don't have as much more to do as they normally would if they were going to work and going outside more often. So be cautious of all three of those because you really need the balance. We don't want to become hunks, chunks, or drunks. And the last thing he suggested was that we have more patience with each other, and especially more patience with our children. Just get outside and go more often. So that's Dr. Roger Harris. Check out the information below for contacting even any of these professionals that I've had at the Roundtable Dialogue. Bye-bye. This is Priscilla Dames.